Okay, we are back here, geometry section 3-4A. So it's another one we've kind of separated into two different sections, 3-4A and 3-4B. This one it's on equations of lines, and this one our big objective here is we're just gonna write the equation of a line with the given information and solve problems by writing these equations. So we're gonna kind of move back and forth between a couple different equations and solve problems that way. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're just going to kind of look and make sure that we have to recall from algebra. So we're going to have to do some remembering, kind of review a little bit about that equations can be written in with any of the following information. So the first one here, an equation can be written with a slope and a y-intercept. Okay, so a slope and a y-intercept, that would be what we call slope-intercept form. Okay, and then the next one would be if we found the slope and the coordinate of a point on the line. Okay, so again, if we're taking a look at what we're dealing with here, we'd say the slope and a point. We would call that point slope, if you guys remember that from algebra as well. Or sometimes we would have just the coordinates of 2 points on a line. And if we had the coordinates of 2 points, well, then the first thing you're going to have to do is find your slope, find your m value, then you can go ahead from there. So let's just take a look at some of those equations of lines and how we write them. The first one, slope-intercept form. All right, so that form of that equation is y equals mx plus b. Remember, that's one of the famous ones that we've known for a long time. And in that case, it's slope-intercept form because you need to have a slope, m, and a y-intercept, b, to be able to figure that one out, okay? In the example to the right here, you can see you've got your slope of 3 and your y-intercept of 8. So we could basically say that in this equation, you could find the slope mx plus b, right? 3x plus 8 is basically your mx plus b there, okay? The next one would be your point slope form. Okay, and a point slope form of the equation it's a little tricky, but it's y minus y1 equals m, which is your slope, times x minus x1. Okay, and here's an example here where you can see y minus 5, that's your point, right? And x is, your slope is -2, it's an x minus 3. So your point would be 3, 5 here, and so you're just plugging those in. Here's your x minus x, and this 5 would go in here for your y minus y, and here's your slope for your m, okay? So it looks kind of weird at first when it says, okay, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. But really, all you need is your y1, your x1, and your slope. And what are those? So if we look at those, we're going to say, our slope is m, right? We knew that, okay? And then you're going to have your x1 that you have to deal with, which is just your x coordinate. That's kind of from the example, you could see that. And then your y1 is your y coordinate. So for point slope, you need 3 things. You need your slope, your x coordinate, and your y coordinate. Once you have those, you can just plug them in that form of that equation, and you're in good shape. Okay? So let's do some examples based on these 2 lines. So the first one, slope and y-intercept. These are pretty simple ones. Give me the slope and y-intercept of each equation. Well, it's already in slope-intercept form. So we could simply say that m is 2, and your b value here would be 5. Okay, how about the second one? Again, fairly easy. Your m value is here, -2/3. And then your b value here would be -4. So that's an easy type of problem that we've done many times before. Okay, moving on. This one, give me the equation with, you got a slope and a point on the line. So we're going to kind of have to use point slope here and figure it out. And then you got to be careful, what are they asking for? What form do they want the answer in? So this one says write an equation in point slope form of a line whose slope is -3/5 and it contains -10/8. Then we can graph this line. I'm not going to worry about graphing it right here. Let's just get the equation down. Okay? So again, what do they want? They want it in point slope form. They want it in point slope form. So again, remember what you need. You need a slope, and you need an x-coordinate and a y-coordinate. So if I just start with point slope form, remember what that is. It's y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And again, if I just kind of look and say, well, what do I need to have? I need my slope, and then I'm going to need a x1 and a y1 and an xy coordinates. All right? So let's plug those in. We know the slope here is m. That's right here. So that's going to be my m value. And then I'm going to have my x1 here and my y1 here. Remember, the x always comes first in the coordinates. So I've got everything I need. All right? So let's plug them in. Let's go y minus my y coordinate, it's 8. So y minus 8 equals my slope, which is right here, -3/5. And then x minus my x coordinate. And you just have to be careful here because my x coordinate is negative. So it would be x minus a -10, which is actually going to make that x plus 10. And there is my equation in point slope form. That's what they wanted with point slope form, and I've got it right there. Okay? All right, so moving on to the next example. A slope and a point on a line again, but this time they want the equation in slope-intercept form. All right, so in this case, we're going to use slope-intercept form as what they want the answer in. So you've got to be careful. Read the directions. What are they asking for? They want it in slope-intercept form, which we know is y equals mx plus b. So we want to get it into that form there. Okay? And they give us a slope and a y-intercept here. Well, this one's pretty easy because they give you your slope of -2/3, but your y-intercept, that's the point they give you, but that's actually your b value, right? So if that's your b value, because that's your y-intercept, this one would be an easy one to write. We'd say y equals -2/3 is my slope, x plus 7. That's an easy one there. All right, letter B is a little bit trickier because we're going to they give us a slope and a point, so we're going to have to start with point slope first. So if I start with y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, I have enough information to start that out because I've got my slope of m and I've got a point 3, -1. So if I just start with point slope here, I go y plus 1. Why is it y plus 1? Because my y coordinate is negative. It would be a y minus a -1, which would make it a y plus 1. Two negatives make it positive, right? Choom, choom. My slope is 4, so it would be 4 times x minus my x coordinate. So it would be x minus 3. Okay, from here, I can get to slope-intercept form. Remember that I'm in point slope, and then they want the answer in slope-intercept form. I can get to slope-intercept form by just using distributive property and solving from there. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to distribute this 4 between this x minus 3. So 4 times x is 4x. 4 times -3 is a -12. And I just bring this y plus 1 down. And now I just have to bring that -1 over to the other side by subtracting it, and I've got my final answer of y equals 4x minus 13 in slope-intercept form. So easily done when you're in point slope to get it into slope-intercept form, just by using the distributive property. All right, continuing on. Again, if I'm going fast, you can always pause, rewind, do whatever you need to do on these. Okay, next one here. We're looking at, let's just do letter A here. There's 2 of these. These take a little bit of time, but let's just figure it out. Again, now we want the equation 2 ways. They want it in point slope form and slope-intercept form. So they want it both ways of having this given information. And in both cases, A and B, they give you just the slope and a point. So it's easy to put it in point-slope form. I can just say, all right, let's go with y minus y, which would be y plus 3, right? Again, if I just put in the equation, I like writing it down just so that you memorize it, because it's a little trickier than slope-intercept. So with that information, I'm just going to say, well, y minus the y coordinate would be y minus a negative 3. So y plus 3 equals my slope of negative 4/3, negative 4 over 3 there, times x minus my x coordinate. Again, another way of looking at it is the opposite of your coordinate. So it would be x plus 1, because it would be x minus a negative 1, which would make it a positive. So another way to look at it is it's the opposite sign of what's in here, because you're subtracting it. So that's just another way to think of it. So actually right here, what we've got this in point-slope form already. Okay? Right now, we've already accomplished this first part where it says point-slope, because this is already in point-slope form. So just by starting it out in point-slope, we've already got one answer done. Now I just have to move it into slope-intercept form by distributing here and then doing the algebra and bringing that 3 over. So let's go ahead and do that. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to distribute negative 4/3 times x is negative 4/3 x, and negative 4/3 times 1 is negative 4/3. And then I just bring down this y plus 3 over here. And so we know that what I have to do here is subtract the 3 from each side. And that gets a little tricky with your fractions, but I would say my answer here would be y equals negative 4/3 x. So use your fraction calculator or whatever you need to do, but it would actually be negative 13/3. Because minus 3 would technically be minus 9/3, and then negative 4 minus 9 would be negative 13/3. Okay, so that's one thing you can do if you need to, or use your fraction key. But right here, you can see that that now is in slope-intercept form. With this answer right here. So you've accomplished both of what they wanted, point slope and slope intercept. Okay, couple more things here. Slope and point on a line here. Slope and a point on the line. So let's just understand that we want to get it in slope intercept form. So you guys can kind of work on these on your own. It's just more practice for you. We want to get it in this form, slope intercept, so y equals mx plus b. And in each of these cases, you basically need to find the slope. So I'm going to give you, I'll get you the slope of these, and then you can kind of find everything else from there. But here you're going to have to find out what the slope is. So if you look at line K is right here over the graph. If I look at the slope, I'm just going to say I got a point here and a point here. So my slope would be, my rise over run would be down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1, which then would be a negative 1, right? Down 1 over 1 would be negative 1. So my slope is negative 1. And my b value is where it crosses the y-axis, right? My y-intercept, well, it crosses there at 2. So my b value is 2. So that should give you enough enough information to put it in slope-intercept form. It would just simply be y equals negative x plus 2. I don't have to write that 1 in there. And that would be the equation. So try the rest of them to put them in the equation, and I'll help you with the slope for each of them, but then you put them in the equation. So letter B, because it's parallel to line K, well, line K's slope was negative 1. If you remember that parallel lines have the same slope, then you would know that this slope has to be negative 1 as well. sorry, my smartboard's messed up on me. So that slope has to be -1 for that one, okay? And then you have to plug in the point to find the new equation. And then for C, you want line L. Well, again, if I look over at line L and look what the slope would be, if I start here and I want to get to this point here, I'm going to go down 2, it's a -2, and over 1, so my rise over 1 would be a -2. So my slope of this one would be -2. And then, of course, you can go from there to figure out the rest of it. What's the y-intercept on that one? You can check right here where it crosses the y-axis. Okay? And then finally, letter D, what's the slope? It's going to be perpendicular to L. So again, if you remember, perpendicular lines have an opposite reciprocal slope. Well, then this one, you could say the slope would have to be a positive 1/2. Because it would be perpendicular to line L. Line L slope was a -2, so the opposite would make that positive. The reciprocal would make that 1/2. Okay? So I'm going to let you guys kind of practice on those, given that you have the slope now. Then for B, you just plug in that point and try to go from there and put it in slope-intercept form. For line L, you could do it just like you did letter A, where you know what the y-intercept is. And D is very similar to B. You just have to plug that point in and get it there. Okay? All right, one more here. And you can try more than these, but I'm going to do one kind of get you started here, is if you have 2 points, what do you do? What do you do if you have 2 points? And in this case, let's look at letter B. If I have 2 points, if I have an x-intercept, well, that basically means that point is -2, 0, right? It's where it crosses the x-axis. So that would cross at -2 and 0. And your y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. So that would be a point 0, 6. So now I have 2 points. So all of these are kind of, what do you do if you have 2 points? Well, here's your step, your directions. Number 1, find your slope. That's number 1. You have to find your slope first. Number 2, use the point-slope equation. Okay, use point-slope equation to get you started. And then finally, from there, once you get it in point-slope form, you can do what we did before, which is distribute and solve for y. So that's what you're really going to have to do on all of these. You get the slope, and then use those points to put it into, and you might have to find the slope by using the 2 points. Like in B, C, and C, they just give you 2 points. A and D, they give you the slope as well. But find the slope using the 2 points, then plug it in using point slope, and then distribute and solve for y. And on these ones with 2 points, when you get to step 2, like for B and C, once you can use either point. You can use this one or this one to plug it in point slope form. Either one will work, and then you distribute and solve for y. So give those a shot, and bring your questions that you might have for you the next time. Okay? Thanks a bunch. We'll see you then.